Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I have the privilege of welcoming someone who leads from the front. She is someone with sharp financial acumen and immense clarity of thought. Her leadership has been instrumental in driving major structural reforms, be it the Atmanirbhar initiative or India's progressive tax reforms, amongst others. She is someone who is building India bit by bit, but as part of a larger plan. She is dynamic, she is articulate, she is visionary, and she is transformative. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our Honorable Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman ji. Ma'am, the budget was one that will enhance India's transformation. It is progressive, inclusive, and balanced. Truly a budget that sets the key pillars for us to become a Viksit Bharat. A budget that is visionary, a budget that is growth-oriented, and a budget that was very detailed. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I now hand over the proceedings to Dad, Mr. Sanjiv Goenka, Chairman of the RP Sanjiv Goenka Group. Thank you.
Thank you, and let me add my own welcome to you, ma'am. It's a true privilege to be given this honor the second time in a row. First of all, let me congratulate you. Yet again, the 8th time in a row, your clarity, your vision, your thoughts, they come through so clearly in the budget. And the way you've reposed trust in the taxpayer, that is very heartening. We've not seen governments before the BJP reposing faith in the taxpayer. So this is a very, very welcome move. Quite honestly, it's a radical break from the previous, not the previous governments, the previous regimes of. There are several initiatives which deserve applause. The redevelopment of cities program, the creation of centers of excellence of AI for education, the National Manufacturing Mission, the initiatives on nuclear energy. I can go on and on and on. But what is very important is that this is your vision, this government's vision for a Viksit Bharat, for a developing Bharat, for a competitive Bharat, for a Bharat that can stand up and look at the world at its own terms and compete to win. That, to my mind, madam, is the biggest message that this budget conveys. Can't thank you enough for this. Before I ask you to address us, couple of questions, if I may. We talked of privatization. Many companies have been cleared for privatization. But sometimes we are finding that vested elements go to courts and stop and delay this whole process. Can we actually implement these without giving too much gap between the announcement and the implementation, such that these vested interests don't get the time to go to court and stall it, and there is no rationale in there stopping it or stalling it. It is just whatever their motives might be. Second, the international media is talking about President Trump and his offer of protection to American industry and American manufacturing, is this something that the Indian government would consider giving some kind of, may not be protection, but support to domestic manufacturing industry? With this, I'd like to hand over to you, madam. People are here to listen to you, not me.
So thank you very much again. Like last year, you've given me an opportunity to come and share some time and thought with you all. Your questions are very pertinent. They involve both issues of what vision the government has to take its own words forward, and also looking at the global uncertainty, particularly the US administration, with an indication that a tariff, I don't want to use the word war, but it is somewhat that. What is our level of preparedness for it? So if I've understood you right, these are the two things that you have started the conversation with. On the vision, in a way, talking about how India can be, protected, what is the manufacturing and disinvestment related issues. See, disinvestment is some commitment from our side, and there is no U-turn or change of position in it. We've had a share of difficulties and challenges. They're not just looking at opportune moment to go to the market. That is one. But it is no secret to say that many of our public sector undertakings, which were cabinet cleared for disinvestment, were not even yet institutionally ready for going to the market. We've taken a decision, we'll have to do it. But there is time being spent on getting them ready, in the sense prepped up for the market. Inclusive of internal absence of institutional arrangements for their own valuation, for professionalizing their body, for complying with certain listing norms. They are all being done now. They are old institutions. Some of them belong to the ancient world, but we are doing it now. And that is taking a lot of time. And sometimes, you're right, litigation stops them halfway through. Sometimes vested interest takes over, not within the government, because there is oneness in the thought in the government that we have to clear this. But despite all this, I would like to tell you that we've not left them lying in paper, waiting for that day when they'll get out, be sold off. No. In the meanwhile, we are ensuring that they're professionally run, their valuations are going to be good, they are really up and running in their best form, and therefore effort as much as readying them to go to the market or be sold off, we are also spending time to get them to be robust. So there's so much seen, there is so much more not seen of our work in getting these institutions or companies ready. So that is about the disinvestment related. We are on course, we will continue to be moving on it. Of course, if there is an election year, everything comes to a standstill. Once in 19, once in 24, so every 5 years you have that problem. In between, you have the problem of getting them readied. I don't want to keep sounding the problems to you, but I'm giving you the reasons why they are getting delayed. But it will happen. That's something which all of us can be clear on. But in the meanwhile, there are, of course, instances which we need to recall. Just on the verge of Air India being given away, we had cases in US. People tried to seize the assets. So it is not just Indian issue, it is also people who are looking at issues from outside of India and taking actions which are hindering us. But we are overcoming them. That's not a big threat, but we will face them and we'll overcome them as and when they come. We are ready for that. On the issue of tariff-related uncertainties because of the US administration, not until it is actually pronounced do you know what you have to work against or face. Till then, it's all the sense of, oh, what if? We can only ready ourselves and give ourselves that kind of ammunition to be able to face it in whatever methodology, whether you're going to stand up to it, whether you're going to fight it, you're going to counter it, or you're going to negotiate through it. All that will have to be tested only when it is actually in our face. So we are conscious of it, we are watching it. We are also looking at the collateral which will be falling on us on an action taken on somebody else. Action taken on China, action taken on Mexico. So what will it have as a collateral damage on us? Even that is being assessed and studied. So we are readying ourselves. But the ways and means in which we'll handle it can be only closer to time and closer to the environment then, or the mood then. These are also multilateral, bilateral decisions, in the sense multilateral because it can have an impact on our relationship and so on. So there's so much about it that we can decide only closer to time.
Thank you, Madam. I'd like to throw the floor open, if I may. I'd like to begin with the man who leads the chemical industry in the renewable energy space, Mr. Vivek Jain.
Jeep. Just a few questions on these two industries, madam. In the chemical industry, we are putting in a lot of investments to make chemicals for the batteries. And batteries has recently been given PLI for developing the battery infrastructure here in India. But some of the chemicals which are used in these batteries are currently only manufactured in China. China actually makes about 90-95% of these chemicals, and unless and until there is a robust supply chain is developed in India, the battery manufacturing will not really take off in the way which the government expects to, both for EV mobility as well as for ESS. So at this point of time, there is an import duty which has been imposed on both import of batteries as well as cells, as well as, of course, EVs. But there's no import duty which has been put on the import of these chemicals from China. And China is, as I just mentioned, about 90-95% of the world's chemicals. And they've got huge capacities which have been set up with the support of the government there, because the government wanted this dominance in the EV space by China. So my question is, at some point of time, we have set up capacities here in India. We would like to make a presentation that some support needs to be given to this sector also, because without this support, the PLI given to the battery manufacturing is also not going to be very effective. So that's one. And second, on the renewable space, there have been certain initiatives which have been, I would say very big initiatives which have been taken by the government to support the growth of renewable energy here in India, both solar and wind. My question here is that, President Trump recently has spoken against the renewable energy industry worldwide. Will this have an impact on what the Indian government proposes to do for the development of this sector?
See, on the battery and related components or materials that you need to import, we have taken a position as regards customs duties on a very principled basis, and rationalization has been happening in the last 2-3 years. Even in this budget proposal, which is still in the parliament, the duty reduction has happened where we want to support domestic capacities, inclusive of EVs, batteries, lithium-ion, and also very many other semiconductor-related components and goods. So whether your particular items are covered in this one or not, I'm not sure of. We can always talk about it a bit later. But our position has been that our basic customs duties will have to be looked at with protecting Indian capacities to attain Atmanirbharta. But in the meanwhile, if imports are necessary for our own manufacturing, we should allow them to come at an affordable price, and the BCD should not burden them, because our MSMEs need them, our manufacturers need them, and if we don't have existing capacity for supplying those goods, they will have to be imported, we will have to import them. So we've taken that position that we will support manufacturing within India, and where capabilities and capacities lie here, we'll also give them the protection using the BCD. But whatever be it, we have rationalized the BCD in such a way that we bring down the rates, eliminate rates where they're required to be eliminated, and raise them only where there is a threat of complete flooding of our markets. So we've taken a policy-driven approach, and that is why I think in the earlier budget we had, July, I think we had removed 8 of them. This budget we've removed 7. There are only 8 left behind, and with rates which are substantially down. So that's the approach on duties. The other question that you raised was about US administration and tariff. I think I've sort of answered that.
Being involved with cricket as I am, I'm going to use a cricketing analogy. And I'm going to ask a young, the equivalent of the Abhishek Sharma of cricket from renewable energy, Devansh.
Good evening, madam. Congratulations on a absolutely phenomenal budget. I think for young India, it's very commendable to have a growth-oriented yet inclusive budget. I wouldn't say more beyond that because I'm too young to say too much. But my limited question is more on the renewable side, which it takes off from last year. I'd asked you this question as well. On many of the inputs which we use across wind and solar, it's about 15 to 18%, and the end product is at about 12%. So there's a lot of input tax credit which is getting created on our balance sheet, which we can't utilize. You had mentioned in the last time I had the opportunity to talk to you that you're looking at rationalizing a lot of these structures, but not much, ma'am, has moved since then. When can we expect some movement around that?
Well, not much has moved. In fact, nothing has moved because the group of ministers is working on it.
Sure.
And they've done a lot of work. I must credit them for it. But yet, there's more to be done. So we have to take a bit more time because we don't want to come out in piecemeal. This time that we do, it should be one big tranche of changes. I do remember your suggestion was taken to the council.
Sure.
So I'm sure when they're considering the rest of it, they'll also take this on board.
Thank you, ma'am.
I turn to a woman entrepreneur from the media and entertainment space. She runs India's oldest music company, Avarna.
Good evening, ma'am. My question to you is, no government has done for women in India as much as you have. How do you think women like me and others who are, for lack of a better word, privileged, how do you think we can help give an impetus to this growth?
Well, the fact that you have reached where you've reached itself can stand out as a motivational point for many who want to, come up their own way. But even otherwise, you can always motivate people, handhold them where you can give your experience as a lesson for people. And you should go around meeting people and talking to them. I'm sure you're doing that, but since you asked, I wish to say that. It is important to share your thoughts. It helps.
Thank you.
I now turn to somebody who needs no introduction, Sohail Seth.
I must say it was a superb budget. I won't use the CII FICCI lexicon of pro-vision, pro-farmer, pro-whatever. And I genuinely believe, in fact, I said it about you that day on Arnab's program, that it was done with decency and dignity. I'm pained that we have an irresponsible bunch of jokers in the opposition, but that's for them to handle. My question is only very simple, and you touched upon it very eloquently. Donald Trump is doing things as the President of the United States as he must. He's not the President of, any other country. And I love what the fact that you said preparedness. I also believe that Indian industry must recognize that there is a danger. Everything can't be only the government's preserve. How do you believe, and you said that in your speech, and I want you to say that because I'm going to tweet about it, talk about it. If there were 3 asks that you had from Indian industry, what would they be?
I'll honestly want to answer this question. But even as I say it, I'm going to have to choose my words. Because I think Indian industry has seen days under the socialist era. Indian industry has seen those days when apparently India opened up after 91. It did open up. But you saw also the government and its approach towards being with the industry. And you're also seeing today India's government, which wants to be with the industry, which is repeatedly proving that it hears the industry out. But yet, unique challenges globally are also the thing which is becoming normal now. So with all this in mind, when I speak of India's industry, I speak being fully conscious that you've survived all these days and you're up and doing your business today. So it's not as if I'm telling you something as though you've never existed before. I'm saying with a clear conscience that you've survived and showed signs of growing. Many of you all have successfully grown as well. The first thing I would want the industry to do is to keep talking to the government. Tell us where you have difficulties. And I clearly remember in 2019, they said, oh my God, if only the tax were brought down. We brought it down. And today too, I strongly believe that was the right action to take, and that has resulted in good outcomes. So talk to the government. Tell us what is it that you see as developments. Second, you should also talk to the government about your perception about what's happening globally. It's one thing for government to see another government acting on something, but the businesses have their own perception. The kind of interaction that US business has with Indian business, I'm sure you're looking at it in a different way. No, if not completely different, at least somewhat nuanced way. So given that, what should the role of the government be? That also is a feedback which will be absolutely critical and useful for. Because eventually, businesses thrive under any shade of the government, in India or anywhere. This government or that government, you're there, you perform, you continue your function. But you have a perception about each government and as to what it can do more for you or less for you so that you can move forward. So you don't change, you don't shut shop because some other government has come into play. They're all elected governments of the people. So you and your commercial instincts are very important for a government to take cognizance and act its own diplomacy or bilateral relationship and talk. And that is why some of the most developed countries have the industry actively engaging with the governments. I'm not saying you should become a lobbyist, because in India, lobby has a different sense. But you should actively, rightfully engage with government so that that can influence government's own diplomacy and many other interests. That's a second. Third, I think your associations will also have to move around the country to say how much has been done, how much is not done. And this I say both from the point of view of GST and from the point of view of customs or direct taxation or policy or any regulatory difficulties. From each one of this, I always find that there is a lag between government's decision making or the absence of it and how message spreads down to your members. The gap is unbelievable. in this day and age, when technology is there with you. Most industry groups, when they meet me in different regions, are differently informed than those who are in Delhi or those who are in Mumbai. So I would think there should be a very good system within industry associations to keep sending and receiving thoughts of what you hear, what they share there. You have it already, but I think it has to be rapid. You have instruments for it, do it. That way the vibrancy will be benefiting your own members and also giving us a feedback for us to act on. 3 things.
A former president of the PhD Chamber of Commerce, a very successful FMCG person in oil and gas, Mr. Sanjiv Agarwal.
Thank you, ma'am. I had the privilege of meeting you in the PhD Chamber of Commerce several times. Ma'am, we are representing food and beverage industry, Coca-Cola and McDonald's in India. And I was really worried because in our McDonald's, my sales were down because of the medium class and lower income group. They were not having the spending power. But with this budget, ma'am, what you have brought, the transformative reforms in this historic budget really helped us because now they will have some disposable income to spend more. So we are very happy with this budget, ma'am. And really thank you so much. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
I turn to someone from the hospitality sector, Karan Paul.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Madam, great pleasure to see you in person, and obviously I've admired your leadership of vision, clarity of thought, and purpose that has been demonstrated for the last many years. I think Sanjeev has put me under hospitality, but we do have a few sectors, in our group. I think, my question to you really is about none of the businesses I'm in. I would say on a macro basis and in terms of leadership and vision, one of the big things for Indian business, at the consumer level, across all levels, is the cost of money. So, I would like to understand what is the grand vision, because I know when the government first came in, there was a lot of clear thought that let's bring the cost of money down to 3 to 5%, for example. Do we have that kind of vision and plan that is going to be executed for India? That's really what I'm interested to understand. Thank you.
At once it belongs to the terrain of RBI and the government. So it is only one part of it on which we can have a thought from the government side without, of course, encroaching into RBI's terrain. So the cost of money is an issue when avenues to raise them are limited. But what the government is trying to do is to open up many more avenues through which money is made available. And that is where I think the big ticket efforts which are going on in IFSC, where you're able to get resources from even abroad and in a globally competitive way, is one of the big ticket things that we've done. I think industries can access that, and that is one of the ways in which you can leverage cheaper money from, let's say, abroad. Within India, we are also making efforts to deepen our bond markets. And that has actually started to pay off in the sense that Indian participants are themselves now coming into the bond markets. And the Reserve Bank's attempt to have a separate platform through which even private participants can now engage in government securities has also brought in money into that. So you are crowding out in some areas, but in most areas are crowding in the private funds. This has also helped. Other than that, the Reserve Bank of India itself is periodically reviewing, and recently they've opened up the tranches of releases that they can bring in more liquidity into the market. See, these are ways in which all of us are trying to ease the stress that affordable capital should be available, money should be available. But of course, if industry has its own thought on it, I'll be happy to receive them.
Shashwat.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, you have proven to be a thought leader that inspires. As probably the youngest in the room, I had one question for you. When you as a policymaker look at a Viksit Bharat by 2047, what are two things that you think could prove to be a challenge for us?
Two things, not as an end goal, two things as those challenges which will reduce the pace in which have the potential to reduce the pace at which we can grow, are the global uncertainties. And the second is the transition, energy which is required for the transition from fossil fuel to renewable. And that's where I think I'm happy that the government has laid before itself various ways in which it can widen the renewable basket, not just look at solar, but also look at pumped storage which can be used again. So there's effective use of the same, TMCs of water for generation of just not once, but also the second time over. Also look at the way in which we have India's own SMR, the small modular nuclear reactors. India has successfully brought this one so it can be scaled up. It's reached a point where it can be scaled up, where it can be commercialized. And that is why in this budget, we have made that announcement that we will now be setting up SMRs all over the country with private participation. But India Atomic Energy themselves have come with a formulation which is going to be very indigenous. Together, because there can be interests, let's say from France or from Russia, we are also amending the Act, which I've already said. The department will work on it. So we are laying a clear picture of how we are going to bring in energy security for us towards this path. That is full of challenges, but yet we are clear on the route in which we want to go. So these are the two I would think are the challenges.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Mr. Ajay Shriram.
Good evening, ma'am. Heartiest congratulations on a wonderful budget. I think, frankly, the positivity it has created in the atmosphere and the feeling among the business community and people down the line is very positive. Really appreciate that. And I can say this on behalf of CII, where Sanjiv and I, both of us have been office bearers there. And one can definitely say this, that the entire CII is very positive on what the outcome are. One issue which comes up, ma'am, which you have addressed at the center, is the issue of fiscal deficit, where from, I think, 6-7 years ago, it was 9% range. You are now targeting 4.4%. But the situation in the states is disturbing. And some of them are really going from bad to worse. Is there any way the center is looking at doing something about this to help the states, or how will it happen? Because ultimately the people there will suffer. Or are the states expecting center will fund us? I don't know what the mechanics of that is, but how will it work, and what can the center do to get the states more under some sort of fiscal control?
Well, constitutionally, the center can oversee the borrowings of the state, which is a constitution given right to the center, Article 293, which we do. But there are some states which, despite that, have their own ways of borrowing. One thing which we have very clearly done, and Prime Minister has been practicing it in Gujarat, and he wanted it to be practiced in center also, is no extra outside of the budget borrowing. You borrow, you will show it in your budget. So gradually, from 21, we are very transparent about borrowing. It's only budgetary. We are not doing any extra outside of the budget borrowing. And every borrowing is brought onto the books. There is no pushing under the carpet. That is one thing which states will have to now, at least some of the states will have to now give special attention to. Otherwise, there is this issue of states and their borrowing, which is governed by the FRBM. But beyond that, if they borrow, they put it somewhere else, which is cost trouble for them. It is causing trouble also because even within that state, that debt's burden is getting intergenerational. Your grandchildren are going to pay for what you are spending on. And at least if you're spending money on asset creation, your grandchildren at least will be paying for something which they can use, on which there can be an economic activity where monetization of that asset can happen. But if you're spending it on revenue matters, if you're spending it on those which is consumption-oriented expenditure, not asset-creating expenditure, the quality of your borrowing and spending is questionable. It's not going to result in asset, and it is going to burden the future generations. So at least we are very clear that we need to do it, and we also speak to the states, and that's why you said, well, how can you help it? We are incentivizing by giving monetary rewards, in the sense we allow them to borrow a bit more. We also give them interest-free loans, which after 50 years, you know what it can be. It's as good as writing them off. We are giving from 2021, 50-year interest-free loan for states to build their capital assets. So that every year, this year, in the proposed budget, which is in the parliament now, waiting approval of the parliament, 150,000 crores is being given to the states so that they can build their assets, and that money from in the state can be used for something else. They can do their own priority investments. So we are helping, we are advising, we are counseling. We are also standing out by saying we are doing it ourselves. We are not treating ourselves differently. We are practicing what we preach. So, in fact, I'll tell you this data, which is very obvious in this budget. What's the fiscal deficit? I'm giving a number of 4.4 for the coming year, 25-26. What is the capital expenditure that I'm allowing in terms of the money which is going in there? 4.3% of the GDP. Fiscal deficit is the amount I borrow. And where is the deficit going? For the capital expenditure. 4.4 and 4.3, exactly what I'm borrowing is what is going into capital expenditure, and not on revenue or not on committed expenditures, salaries, pensions. No, I'm not spending on them. I will spend on them. But that which I borrow, I'm spending only in creating assets. That's the kind of discipline Prime Minister Modi has brought into the fiscal management of the country. And that is what is going to help our future generations.
Anas Junaid.
Thank you, Madam Finance Minister. Fantastic budget. One budget where all my teammates posted it as status on their WhatsApp. So really great budget. Just one question out of curiosity. We would become a Viksit Bharat by 2047. In that context, what are the top 3 sectors that India should take leadership on by the time we reach there? Do you have any top 3 sectors, like in semiconductors or anything, which you believe that India should take leadership by the time we reach 2047?
No, that we are very clearly showing that we will be supporting semiconductors. We will invest in artificial intelligence, please. We'll also be spending on biological sciences, research and development, innovation, all that goes on. We've given priority. In fact, 14 sunrise sectors are being supported. So they will have to develop, but that doesn't mean we can still live with poverty. It certainly doesn't mean that 2047 with all these industries we'll reach there, but we'll still have a laggard in terms of we've not achieved our zero poverty level. No, that is equally important. We should have affordable education, affordable healthcare, quality healthcare. Even that is a priority. So I can't say top 3 this at the cost of the rest.
We have a leading stock market investor, Mr. Kedia.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, ma'am, for this wonderful budget. I would like to say one thing, madam. Immediately or suddenly you have just kept 1 crore people out of this tax net and all. Again, thank you very much for that. But I would like to know, ma'am, that the best international practice is to keep the personal income tax threshold limit similar to the per capita income of the country. So But in India, you had, thank you very much again that you had raised to 3 times or 4 times of our per capita income. And now this time it is 6 times of our per capita income. So that's a very bold move. But madam, flip side of this is that the entire, this burden of personal income tax is lying on the shoulder of the 2% of the population. So ma'am, it has its own consequences. So could you please share your view that how are you going to tackle this? Thank you, madam.
But when you put it like that, it gives a feeling that we are going to put all the burden on the 2% while we've let go the others. It is, first of all, the step that we've taken in this budget is to honor the taxpayer. That is why we've taken it. And that has resulted in taxpayers getting relief. So it doesn't mean that I'm going to burden the rest of them. No, it was the principle which drove us to do this is to honor the taxpayer and not burden anybody. It's not to certainly burden anybody who's an honest taxpayer. We want to respect them. But we also have a duty to widen the tax base. We will have to get more people who are eligible, who are in that eligible bracket to come into tax paying, to become assessees. So we'll have to do that work to expand the net.
I will turn now to Mr. Utsav Parekh.
Ma'am, thank you very much. The budget really, from being a person from the capital market, the budget was beyond our expectation. 1 lakh plus crores you are given in the hands of the taxpayer. And that money is going to fulfill some of their dreams. It is going to fulfill their ability to do education for the children, do whatever they desire. But one question that comes up is that the higher tax bracket people, no percentage saving has been done. Would you look at a percentage saving or rather a percentage reduction in their income tax maybe in the next budget?
Well, I thought I've changed the tax rates to everybody.
The highest...
We brought down the tax rate for every slab.
Ma'am, the highest tax slab has not changed. It's
Of course it's come down.
30%, ma'am.
You do your calculations and I'm confident that what you were paying earlier, what you're paying today, is far less higher than what you will be paying from 1st April. Please do your calculation.
Certainly.
I'm absolutely sure that for every income band, the rates have been brought down. And it is predictable. It multiplies in 5 only. 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. That's how it goes. And in this side, 0 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 12, multiples of 4. I have brought income categories to a lower level, which were otherwise in a higher band. Consciously designed it in such a way that every taxpayer will have something more in his hand and not have to pay the tax. Please do check it up once more.
Sure.
If necessary, I'll send you the data.
Sure.
Mr. K.K. Bangar.
Madam, previously in your budget, you had introduced a new concession for companies who were set up for 15% tax. And this provision, I think, by 2024 was available. We were all hoping that this would get extended. Unfortunately, this has been missed out. So I think it will be in the interest of new investments and encouraging new investments if you were to consider continuing with the same level of taxation for new companies to be set up. Thank you.
Mr. Saran.
Ma'am, once again, heartiest congratulations for a wonderful budget. I come from minerals and metals industry. There was a time there used to be... He's from steel. There used to be no export duty on iron ore, and then gave the duty across board, all grades of ore. But then for sake of Goan miners, duty for certain low-grade ores was exempted. Now what is happening, in the name of low-grade ore, a lot of iron ore is getting exported without any duty. As a result, the cost of iron ore for the metallurgical industry, value addition industry, is rising. So if the uniform tax rate is applied across all grades of iron ore, then not only the value-added product will be exported, it will be a big relief for the steel industry in India.
But there's one thought in my mind, not so much to answer your question. Why is it that the low-grade iron ore goes out and becomes pellets, and we bring the pellets back here? Why can't our investments go towards making pellets here itself?
That was precisely my point, ma'am.
No. The intent to set up such units doesn't exist. I've engaged with industry now for 3-4 budgets. I've asked this question, why would we want to bring the pellets back rather than invest in making the pellets ourselves? I have not had an answer. You might say duty, easy export, whatever. If they are the only answers, I'll certainly look afresh into the matter. But we've had this discussion. Amazing that and sometimes in the name of the low-grade iron ore, even the higher ones go out of this country.
That's again precisely my point, ma'am.
Yeah, your point is fine. Give me a solution that I'll do for you.
You should have a uniform
I'll be happy to
duty
do
rate.
it.
You should have uniform duty rate for export tax on iron ore. And it was there before.
You think
now,
that will solve the problem?
Yes, ma'am, because Goa iron ore miners only had low-grade ore. So for them, this scheme was brought to exempt the export tax on low-grade. But now Goa is not mining any significant quantity of iron ore.
They had a problem also because the matter was in the courts. For a very long time, Goa's iron ore, even after extraction, were lying huge mounds of it in the pit heads. They couldn't be exported. There was a problem.
Behind us, now there's a shortage of even iron ore fines. And yet they are being exported because they go duty-free.
Shikhar.
Actually, we come from an industry, ma'am, wherein we work with the governments, but we don't get, we get paid by the public actually. So we wanted to understand whether some sort of model can be proposed to the governments where a revenue sharing back from the industry, you know, in some government departments. We work in the outsourcing of government services. Like, ma'am, in developed economies like UK, etc., wherein now they have proposed wherein certain government services, you pay back some money to the governments, you know, to support them for the government departments. Like now in the US also, they have started the Department of Government Efficiency. So we wanted to understand if some sort of thing can also be done in India to support the government from the industry and also provide better public services to the citizens.
Okay, I'll take his input.
Mr. Girish Mehta.
Sir, just wanted to say just very good budget. No more question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am, and congratulations on behalf of the entire tourism industry. I represent the tourism industry. I'm chairing the Indian Chamber of Commerce, Aviation and Tourism Committee. Although it's an excellent budget, as far as tourism, ma'am, is concerned, we can do two things. It's the largest employment generator in the world, and we bring in valuable foreign exchange. But the incentives that were there and MD assistance that was there earlier on the tourism industry is not there anymore. And the tourism ministry's budget has been absolutely slashed. From 400 crores, it came down to 33 crores and now 3 crores. So the tour operator and the tourist guides who are totally dependent on inbound tourism, and the foreign exchange we bring remains in the country. It's not like FDI, which goes away. So we can not only change the foreign exchange position, but we can also create millions of jobs. So I think a relook at the tourism industry is very important. If you want, we can submit a paper with certain suggestions on behalf of the Indian Chamber. So thank you very much, ma'am. But excellent budget. God bless you, and God bless our Prime Minister.
Yes, Sajiv.
There's one request. Actually, we run McDonald's restaurants in India, and McDonald's restaurants bring happiness to the families and basically to children's, ma'am. What happened in the last 2-3 years, government has stopped importing toys from China and Vietnam because they have brought in BIS, which is not being allowed. And the quality of toys are very, very high standard because children put the toys in their mouth. And that is to be very good food grade, and it has to be very quality conscious. McDonald's don't allow quality in India. So that's the biggest problem in India, and we are creating more toys factory in India, but it will take some time. If we can be allowed for 2-3 years, ma'am, import of toys. Yeah, actually China and Vietnam. Actually the toys gives happiness to children, and we cannot get Happy Meal. No, toys, actually they are very high grade, food grade material, which India cannot make. So that is the biggest problem in India. No manufacturer in India can manufacture toys as per McDonald's standards.
Thank you, Sanjeev. I think we've come to the end of an extraordinary session. Thank you very much for your participation. And before we leave, I think we have to stand and thank our Honorable Finance Minister.